am here to talk about Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I have never read any Ann Patchett before. I've obviously heard of her. I think she owns a bookstore. I think, like, in that bookstore book that I read, they even talked a little bit about her bookstore. In any case, this book, I had heard about for a couple years. I guess it came out in 2023. I had heard about it for a couple years. It sounded interesting to me. I'm not somebody who reads a lot of literary fiction. I'm pretty selective about it because I typically don't like lit fic. It's kind of dull. It's very MFA coded. I don't know. I mean, and I say this as somebody with a master's in writing, literature, and publishing myself. But mine was an MA though, not an MFA. As somebody who, I don't know, prefers something with a little more genre to my writing or reading, well, both. I somehow never picked up an Ann Patchett book. But this book, the story sounded interesting to me. What it is it is set in 2020 during the pandemic. The main character, Laura, she is at home in rural Michigan with her husband, Joe, and their 3 20-something daughters, Emily, Maisie, and Nell. And they're working on the cherry farm, the cherry orchard. And so that is more or less kind of the frame story. We kind of go between that and the summer of 1988, in which Laura spent that summer at Tom Lake, which is a kind of summer stock theater venue. She was Emily in Our Town, and she was supposed to be May in Fool for Love, but things happen. And so the book overall is Laura telling her daughters about that summer. And in particular, they're curious about how she used to know and date a man who went on to become a famous actor. His name is Peter Duke. Everybody just refers to him as Duke. And he was, at Tom Lake with Laura in 1988. And Laura had already been to LA and filmed a movie and was waiting for that movie to be released when, she ended up at this summer stock thing. So it was kind of like, people will be able to say they saw you win, because it's supposed to be kind of her springboard to stardom. Duke really wants to be a star. He has star quality, obviously, and he's magnetic, and he and Laura have this kind of whole thing. And the daughters are like, tell us about... And I guess what appealed to me about this book is that I have a lot of intersections with the story. So the summer stock thing reminded me of my time at Shakespeare at Winedale, where we all lived in a kind of a farmhouse together. We did Shakespeare in what's known as the barn, which is a converted barn made to look more or less like the Globe Theater, but like at 1/8 the size maybe. And we had a little pond there. We didn't swim in it, but I had a point of context for this summer that Laura is talking about, having done something similar myself, my fond memories, the crushes, and the interactions between, what we call showmances, right? That kind of thing. Mine was later, but it was still pre-cell phone, and I feel like that's all better because it stays in the past as this memory that you treasure, and you may or may not still be in touch with some of those people. Actually, Winedale is having its 55th anniversary this year, I want to say. We were supposed to have our 50th back in 2020, and we were all supposed to go down, and that obviously did not happen. We had to do it kind of from a distance, remote reunion. This time I will not be going, in part because sadly I somehow was overlooked and not asked to participate, but also I wouldn't go back to Texas right now. given the political climate there. So, yeah, I'm sad to miss it, but at the same time, there is that sense that some things are best left in the past as a good memory, which is, I think, a big theme of this book, like, oh, because the daughters are like, aren't you sad that you didn't become a star, and she's like, well, then you guys wouldn't be here, and I love, living on this farm and with the cherry orchard, which obviously, is kind of this Chekhov thing. The book has a lot of, our town mapped to it, and then, they're in a cherry orchard during the contemporary parts of the book, and at Winedale we had pecan trees. And then, again, like, I get asked a lot about the famous people I worked with when I worked on film sets, and so I know what it's like to have kids asking you, oh, but like when you knew this person or worked with that person, yeah, Yeah, there are times when obviously I think about, what if I had made other decisions, choices? What if I had said yes to this or no to that? Or, but I ended up in a life that I am happy with, content with, most of the time. Nobody's happy all the time, right? So, I mean, yeah, I still hope at some point in the future to have more interactions with the film industry. I would love one of my books or one of my scripts to, make it to the screen. But at least I'm getting some stage stuff done this summer. I've got a few like plays happening, and that's, it's been a long time since I've done that either. Anyway, enough about me. The book. So I think I liked this book because I could identify. So I don't know what that says about, like, I gave it 5 stars. I mean, it's probably more like a 4.8, 4.9. It's not perfect, but like, I read it relatively quickly. I enjoyed it. I think the writing style is quite lovely. I would maybe try another Ann Patchett book. But I don't know if it would be for everyone, if they would find these characters and situations interesting. Is it a little bit predictable? Yes. I pretty much guessed each of the things that was going to happen well in advance of it happening. Some of the reveals. Pause here for spoilers. I'll put the spoiler thing up. But like, the fact that Jo, her husband, was also at Tom Lake at the same time she was there with Duke, and like, I knew when they weren't giving one character a first name, I was like, oh, that must be Jo, that must be her husband, and then at the end, when Peter Duke dies and is buried in their cherry orchard in their family cemetery, I kind of saw that coming too, because I mean, to be honest, like, it's well written. Like, these things are the seeds are planted. Nothing comes out of nowhere. And if you're an avid reader and a close reader and an observant reader, like somebody who pays attention, you're probably going to pick up on a lot of this stuff. I knew that the romance between Duke, I mean, it's very clear that the romance between Duke and Laura doesn't last because she's married to Jo, but like, I knew that Duke was going to move on to this other character. And maybe it's because that's how showmances go, or maybe that's just because that's the trope, or I don't know. But in any case, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I would consider reading another Ann Patchett. I would need to kind of go read what her other books are, read a synopsis, see if there's anything else that she's written that sounds interesting to me, because for all I know, this is the only one that has some kind of story that I would care about. That has happened to me. I've read a book and I really like it, and then I realize the author has never written anything else that sounds interesting to me. I know I've heard of Bel Canto, but I don't know anything about it, like what it's about. I feel like maybe I've heard of The Dutch House, but again, I don't know what that's about either. In any case, if you have read Tom Lake, what did you think about it? If there are other Ann Patchett books I should read, let me know that. If there are other books that are kind of adjacent story-wise, set in like, a theater setting or Hollywood kind of setting, let me know that, because nothing springs to mind. I do have a book called Too Real, which is a nonfiction about a guy, by a guy, and about his time in Hollywood trying to get a movie called Dawn's Plums made with like Leonardo DiCaprio and Tobey Maguire or something. So I do have that. If anybody's read that, let me know if that one's any good. But yeah, that's where we are. And until next time, take care.